Hey, what's up? I wanted to show one of the workflows that you can use to get textures fully from Blender into Unity without the use of other programs, just for anyone that was struggling, or that it might help. Okay, so we've got a default cube here. I will just scale it a little on a couple of the axes, maybe pull it down a little bit on the y-axis like so. This might be a wall. So the first thing, of course, to do would be to do a UV unwrap. We'll select these faces here and mark them as seams, and then take the whole thing and do an unwrap. Go into the UV editor. Right. First thing to do is to make the scale uniform and then unwrap. There we go. So now you've got your faces here, and you can see them here. You might want to rotate them and move them around depending on what kind of texture you're going to be using. For now, I'm just going to use fully procedural stuff to show an example. So let's just start with the base material. And for this, I'll just name it wall. And I'm going to switch over to a diffuse material, but you may want to stick with the principled if you're going to be using a PBR workflow to test your textures outputs. For now, we'll just stick with a normal and a diffuse. So for that, let's start with an RGB color. I'm just going to pull that into the diffuse here. Of course, it's not necessary. You could just change it yourself there. Like the little color wheel, get nice blue. And for the normal, I'm going to take Voronoi texture as well as a bump. Take the factor into the height, and then the height into the normal, like so. And then we can change some of the values. So we can maybe fracture it a bit. And there you've got some sort of light cracks, if you will, in the wool. Looks kind of nice. You might also create some noise and take a mix, put them between the two here, and alter some of the detail, and there you go. You've got kind of a really noisy normal map just to make things show. So the first thing to do is to save the blend file. I would recommend exporting this as an FBX, but I'm just going to do it as a blend file for an example. So I'll call this wall. I misspelled that, no problem. Okay, next we're going to create an image texture for the diffuse. So we'll create a new image texture and we'll call this wall underscore base. I'll show you my editor script that uses those suffixes in a bit. But let's take the wall base here, and basically with the node selected, we're going to go into scene, go into cycles, we're going to turn the sampling down, go into bake, select diffuse. Of course, this isn't necessary. You could just copy the value into Unity, but it's best if you're doing any sort of texture painting or anything like that. And of course, don't forget, you'll need to save. This is very dependent on your UVs. So what we'll do is we'll just take this and turn off direct and indirect. You may want to bake lighting into your texture. I'm not sure what you want. It's up to you. And you see the bake should go fairly fast. Okay, and as you can see, our texture has saved on. If we go into the UV editor here, we open this up, you can see the UVs match up to the textures. Okay, so then what we can do is basically take our image here and save it as wall base. And then we'll do the same for the normal map. So we're going to come in here and create a new texture. I'll call it wall nor. Okay, and for the normal map, we're simply going to switch the bake type over to normal and bake that into the normal map here. And as you can see, it'll switch over to wall nor, and you can see the normals have baked onto the texture. There's definitely some odd stuff going on around these areas. So, you know, you can see this part here is a little hecked up. But again, that's something to figure out as you make your actual textures. For now though, we're going to repeat the same process. We're simply going to take the image here and go to save as and save this out as the normal. Okay. Once that's done, you can jump into Unity and wait for it to import your materials. It's one directory up, I think. There we go. And as you can see, we just have the wall here. Now I've got a default setting for materials not to be imported here. But what I will do is just pull in this wall. And as you can see, there are no materials attached. It's simply got the default lit shader in the mesh renderer. And because we only have one cube, there's no hierarchy. It's just the cube straight onto the object. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this wall base and wall nor, and I have a custom script here that'll create a material out of them. And we can drag them, but I can show you, if you just create a material, you would just drag the base into the base map and then the normal into the normal map. And you could also do the same thing by baking occlusion or metallicism and glossiness into your texture as well. It's the same process, and put the metallic and the occlusion in there. So Unity, as far as I know, treats metallic and glossiness as the same thing in its PBR workflow. Anyway, so once that's complete, all you have to do now is mess with some of the values for the PBR workflow. So you can change the smoothness, you could change the metallicness of the texture. You'd obviously want to potentially put some light probes, etc. on. But yeah, otherwise that's how you would generate your normal map. So of course this is only 12 tris count, but more tries, I guess, if you will. But it looks very, very detailed because of that normal map that we baked. And it's pretty easy to just adjust the strength and rebake. So if you decided that this was too intense, it's now very, very easy to just come into here and reduce the intensity of your bump map here. So like so, and then simply go back and bake your normal again. And then simply take the image, click on Save As. You might want to change the compression levels as well, because these textures can come out quite big. And once you let that re-import, you can see it's now much, much less intense, and the cracks show up a lot better. Okay, so a couple of closing notes. I have in my project settings preset managers here, and you can see that I have a texture importer and a normal texture importer. Normally, if you imported that normal, you would have gotten an error when you created the material because it wasn't marked as a normal. And what that means is if you go into the inspector here, you have the texture type, it has to be set to normal for Unity to recognize it as a normal map. I believe that's just because of the colors. Also see MIPs are being generated here and a bunch of algorithms for compression, etc. So that's actually set in the preset manager. I believe this may only be available in the beta. And you can see I have two presets, the normal texture importer and the texture importer. And so those are the presets for the two. You can see default texture, normal map there, and I also have an FBX importer. And this just defines what I want to do with an FBX when I import it, including generating light map UVs and also not creating any materials. And the final thing I wanted to show was the editor script. This is a little bit messy. It's actually one of the first editor scripts I've ever written. But basically it's a menu item. It gets all of the selected textures in the project window. So all of the textures that you have selected here. That's just a generic method called getFiltered, and selection mode.assets. That writes them into an array and basically return if the length is less than 1, meaning no textures are selected. Otherwise, we get the directory name for the project directory. Now, Unity really annoys me. When you create an asset, you would think that it would create in the directory you currently have selected, or that there would be an option to do that, but there's not. So unfortunately, you have to do this kind of ugly past get directory name, which is under the system.io namespace, and grab the directory from the asset path. So you can see the first element of the selected array of textures, grab the asset path, and then grab just the directory name off of it, since that's the entire path, including its file name and extension. Then we create a material with the universal render pipeline lit shader. And then you can see we loop over all of the materials, grab their file names without their extensions, grab the last index of the underscore, which is just my personal naming convention. You could do anything with it, but you can see if I go into the structure here, everything has an underscore and then base nor, and for metallic and gloss maps, I use moss, which is what Armory Paint uses. So this is the same workflow here. So basically we just go into here, you can see that we switch over the substring of the file name from that last index to the end to lowercase, so that case doesn't matter. And then we check if it's normal, metallic, otherwise we assume it's the base map. And then we set the textures, bump map, metallic, gloss map, and base map textures. and then create the asset. If you're wondering what these are inputs in the shader, and they're not just .main texture like you may be used to. That's because the universal render pipeline lit shader works differently. And if you're curious, you can search for the shader, click all, and then filter out only shaders. And here you can see universal render pipeline lit shader. You can scroll down and now you can see texture albedo is, or albedo, I don't know how the hell to pronounce that, is base map. And then you can see metallic gloss map is texture metallic, so on and so forth. So you can see that these are textures, texture albedo, texture metallic, texture occlusion, so on and so forth. So these are all the values you can set from code. So you just call set texture, or in the case of float, you would do set float, so on and so forth. And then you simply create the asset inside that path with the path combined, the material file name, which is stripped from the actual first underscore, or the last underscore, sorry, all the way back, and then the directory that we found back here, which of course could happen pretty sure that could just happen here. And yeah, that's basically the editor script. So that's what allows me to create those materials. So this would speed up your workflow pretty significantly, since you can filter out textures. I really don't know how this works. I can't find any documentation that says that this works, but it seems to work. Whenever I drag something with underscore nor on it, it seems to actually recognize it as a normal map and apply these settings onto it. It was really just something by chance I discovered, so I'm pretty impressed that that even works, but it seems to work fine. And then of course there's the importer as well. So yeah, that's just the last touching notes I wanted to make, just so that you can perhaps speed up your process. And again, anything that you find in this video that you would like to point out as being inefficient, or that you think could be faster, any tips you have are very much welcome in the comments. If you have any questions, or you'd like me to post any code, feel free to ask. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Please drop a like if it helped you or anything like that. And I also will leave a link to my game dev Twitter, which I created, in the description. So giving a follow would be hugely appreciated. Anyway, thanks for watching.